Hi guys, and welcome back to Gas City Gaming's Warhammer 40k 8th edition preview series. In this video we'll be taking a look at the movement phase, which has now been kind of revealed, as well as the psychic phase, what they've revealed so far about those. So first things first, every unit now has its own movement characteristic. We kind of assumed that based on what they told us before, but now we know that for sure that every unit has its own specific amount that it can move, so 5 inches, 4 inches, whatnot. They've said in the article, you know, Terminators are slow and lumbering versus Harlequins kind of leaping and diving and everything over everything else. Some units will have a minimum movement speed. Now this is mostly flyers. They said mostly in the article, so, well, they didn't say mostly in quotation marks, but they said mostly, which means maybe something else has minimum movement. I can't think of anything offhand, but I don't know, maybe some kind of chariot or something might have minimum movement. Flyers will have their own individual minimum and maximum movement, so they'll have to move so far or else they crash, or they'll have to have their own maximum movement, but, you know, bombers go slower than fighters, so that makes sense that way, so each individual flyer will have its own movement distances as well. Running has also been changed. It no longer takes place in the shooting phase, it takes place during your movement phase, and is called advancing. You will roll a die and add it to your movement. So if your movement is 6 inches, roll a d6, you end up with a 4, you can move up to 10 inches. You then do forego any advancing, shooting, or charging for the rest of your turn, though, as well, if you choose to advance. There will be no walking through enemies or solid walls. However, you can fly over them, so movement hasn't changed that much. You're not just phasing through things like Canoptek Wraiths from the Necrons. You can't just do that. Just logic stuff, right? You can't walk through solid walls. Also, one new thing they did add, they took this from Age of Sigmar, again, Age of Sigmar. If you're in combat at the start of your turn, you can fall back, that's what the rule is called, in your movement phase. Basically, you disengage from the combat and fall back, so that then during your shooting phase, your other units can choose to shoot at that unit that you fell back from. However, if a unit falls back, you cannot then advance, shoot, or charge either. So, some kind of neat trade-offs there. Definitely shooty armies are going to take advantage of that. You know, a unit of theirs gets charged, but it's a little more survivable. They can take a step back from it, let their unit shoot at it, maybe move another unit in front of it to kind of screen that, kind of create almost a tactical retreat situation where you have units bounding over each other and everybody covering fire otherwise. So that's kind of cool. I like that rule. The next thing we'll get into is what you see the pictures here scrolling by about, is our psychic phase. They talked about the psychic phase just today here as well. So each psyker can cast as many powers as their data sheet says, rather than, you know, warp charge this. They said, in the article, they said this was previously called its mastery level, so I don't know if they're going to keep that title or if they're just going to, you know, more overtly just say, well, here's my Warlock, for example, it can cast 2 things in one turn, or whatever it may be, but I don't know if they're going to overtly say that or make it a mastery level, you know, one of those two. So to cast a psychic power, you roll 2 dice. The bigger the impact of the power, the harder casting the power will be. We'll have a look in a minute here at the one power they did spoil. So next point is enemy psychers. So if I choose to cast, they didn't say whether or not enemy psychers can dispel blessings. You know, if I'm targeting something like with a witchfire or targeted witchfire, yes, you can dispel. Enemy psychers can block the power if they are within 24 of the caster. The number of times that a psyker can block powers is also defined in their data sheet, so I'm guessing that's going to be defined as possibly the same number of things you can cast, hopefully. But what I want to know is, can I block a blessing or just something that's going to harm me? That's what I kind of want to find out. They didn't say anything about that. All they said was you can block powers, so maybe it's everything, but I just want to find out the specifics of that, as I'm sure you guys do as well. Perils of the Warp are also still around, so I'm guessing you roll a double 6, you roll on your perils table, and maybe your psyker just gets sucked into the warp. Maybe he gets super powered. Who knows? We will find out hopefully soon. Each factions, just like we've had in the past, each factions will have their own powers that pertain specifically to them. You know, armies of the Imperium will have things that are themed around them. Chaos maybe will be able to summon stuff, maybe demons as well. Tyranids will be able to do Tyranid-esque things. You know, all the armies are going to have their psychic powers themed to their own powers. So one thing that I did think was neat, though, is that every army every Psyker, actually, not just every army, will know the power Smite. Now, Smite was actually our power that was spoiled. So we are going to have a look at that here in a second. Have a look at Smite. There we are. So Smite, this was actually up on GW's website, this graphic that you're looking at here. So Smite. Smite has a warp charge value of 5. So on your 2d6, you have to roll 5. If manifested, the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches of the Psyker suffers D3 mortal wounds. We'll get into mortal wounds in a second. If the result of the psychic test was more than 10, the target suffers D6 mortal wounds instead. Now, if you've played Age of Sigmar, you're familiar with mortal wounds, but what they are, if you're not familiar, is mortal wounds are a wound that can have no armor saves or no invul saves are allowed to be taken against it. Now, what is neat here, that they kind of accidentally spoiled, is there still will be invulnerable saves. So that's kind of neat. We haven't heard whether or not Feel No Pain is still going to be around, but invulnerable saves are still there. So we saw, our Space Marine units were spoiled, and they're going to have their 3-up save. But for example, when we saw our Terminator card the other day, if you check out the other video in unit spoilers, they didn't have, like we're used to, have their 2+ save and then a 5-up invul. We didn't see that, so we don't know their save, I'm guessing, is me armor-based, but we now know that there will also be invulnerable saves as well, so that's kind of neat. But mortal wounds avoid either of those. So are there going to be other saves? Is there going to be Feel No Pain? We'll find out. But we'll get back to Smite here. So Smite has a warp charge value of 5. So I'm going to roll my dice. I get 8, average roll 7 or 8. So I cast my power. A couple questions I have about this that as of me filming this, they haven't said one way or another yet, is if manifested, the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches of the Psyker suffers D3 mortal wounds. What if my Psyker's in a unit? If my Psyker's in a unit, does the unit have to be able to see that? Or does the Psyker himself have to be able to see that? I'm going to assume that the Psyker himself has to be able to see that, but it's kind of interesting that it's the closest thing. So if everybody knows Smite, and this is kind of the way some of the powers are going to go, if I know your Psyker knows Smite, and then maybe has a Blessing, do I put maybe my weaker unit up front and have my stronger unit just a couple inches back? So if we do get Smite off, it goes against this unit, not the unit behind that I want to charge into combat maybe, or something like that. So could come up with some interesting tactical decisions in the game, which I'm all for. Those more interesting decisions for little stuff like that. Oh, it hits the closest guy, so what am I playing that chess match, thinking a move or 2 or 3 or 4 ahead. And if the result of the psychic test was more than 10, the target suffers D6 mortal wounds instead. Now this is kind of cool, so you could smite our Dreadnought that we were looking at the other day that has 8 hull points, so you could do a chunk of that, shooting phase, get out a couple las cannons, and blow the rest of it away. So you can still blow things up in a turn. Again, we don't know, for example, how big a Land Raider is going to be yet. Hopefully we find that out soon. But that's all they've kind of spoiled over the last couple days for us at this point. So that's all I got for you guys today. Now coming up, I'm filming this on Friday. Saturday, so tomorrow, they're going to come out and talk about a new war zone they have. Now whether this is going to be a new deployment type or just a new setting for the story, we'll see. And then on Sunday, I'm kind of excited for, they're going to talk about the shooting phase and everything that's different on the shooting phase. So I'm kind of excited to get to hear about that and to let you guys know about that as well. Now if you enjoyed the video, like I enjoyed making it for you, please like, share, subscribe, do everything that lets people know Gas City Gaming exists. Definitely help me out. Follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Dave865, at Dave2619 on Twitter. Would love to hear back from you in the comment section below as well. If you liked the video, if you didn't like it, what do you think I could do better? Please let me know. Would love to hear back from you guys. Have an awesome rest of your day, and remember, the Emperor protects.